Thank you so much, sir. Hi, I am CA Yamini Goyal from Taxmann's Research and Advisory Department. Now, I would be asking few questions on subject matter from Mahesh sir for his insights. So, the first question in line is that GST is a landmark reform that sought to remove a complex system of indirect taxes with one nation and one tax. In the last 5 years, has GST achieved that objective? What has been the feedback from the industry?
No, thanks, Yamini. I think we are turning 5 years today on GST. It's a landmark day. It's the largest tax reform in the country. So, to answer your question, has it been successful? Let me take a step back. Rather than giving my view, we've also done a survey with about 240 CXO level folks who have participated, and up almost 90, actually 90% of them have welcomed GST, with 60% saying it's completely positive and the others saying neutral to positive. So in short, industry, and this is a survey that was cut across very large companies, large as well as the MSME sector. So in some sense, it's not a one sector or one size companies, it's a cutting across sector thing. Uh, to me, the the whole philosophy of GST was supposed to be a one nation, one tax. Has that worked? Yes, it has. The cascading effect of tax has been done away with. There is also a very simple way to procure goods and services from anywhere in the country without having to worry of a loss of tax. So supply chain optimization has been one of the things that the participants in the survey have also highlighted. What has also happened is almost 80% of the survey folks have believed that the government has done an excellent job on the technology space. And even from my lens as well, when I see it and we look at it from multi countries, India has been one of the fastest tax technology companies embracing change and e-invoicing, and e-waybill was anyway first and e-invoicing thereafter. So from the start date of GST to when these technology reforms came was pretty quick. So in short, technology has been great. I think the engagement between government and industry has also been good. So all in all, a success. I think a lot of journey has been traveled, and there's lots more to be done as well. Uh, 300 plus circulars have been issued, but we'll cover that as we speak. But my opening remarks is that it's a successful reform.
Thank you, sir. So the next question in line is automation of tax compliances by the government has been a massive win and has worked efficiently, especially in comparison with the erstwhile regime. What should be the GST's next focus from the technology perspective?
So I think clearly, from like you pointed out, vis-a-vis the erstwhile regime, it's far more automated. But just to make it simple for all the participants today, where under the erstwhile regime, if you had operations in 30 states, you had to deal with 30 state return formats. Now you have to just deal with one format which is applied in multiple states. So no longer you have to have that variance in each state. What that also has helped companies do is to work on data extraction, data saving, and keeping data ready for audits in a more structured way rather than having to deal with it state-wise very differently. Because even the rules of data storage, which I think are equally, if not more important than actually the return filing, is also something that we has GST has achieved. Third point, I think from a technology standpoint, like we started with the returns, then we did the e-waybill, and then in October 1, 2020, for 500 crore plus companies, we had the e-invoicing, which got reduced the threshold very soon to 150 crores respectively by April 1, 2021. And as recent as April 1, 2022, we now have the threshold at 20 crore rupees. Because somewhere a common question that we get asked is, what has the government actually done? How's the 90 to 95,000 per month collection of the first few months changed to 150,000? And I would give the full credit to the automation efforts that has been done, because to me that is the most powerful reason of tax collections, because it's not that the rates of tax have gone up. In fact, rate of tax has gone down. If you recall, 28% had 220 products. Now there are less than 30 products in that category. So to me, great journey on the automation front. I think your other part of your question was what next? I think what the government has also done, and it's made available in public domain of their progress, is working on the BFA front, which is the Business Intelligence Fraud Analytics tools. And therefore, from their perspective, they're running more analytics to be able to go for sharpened audits and investigations. And that's something that I think they've already done. And as I understand, those are few things that the GSTN will do. As recent as yesterday, we had the 47 GST Council meeting. There's a GOM form for technology-related aspects of GST. And there's also decisions that have been made. We are yet to read the fine print, but that GST decisions that have been made, which I would imagine will be more strengthening on the input credit front in particular, the GSTN is expected or is likely to be focusing on the implementation of that. And last but not the least, there's also important decision yesterday on the MSME sector, which can now get onto the online platform. Some of the technology changes that are expected, the GSTN will do that. So those are my four sub-bullet points to your one question on automation of technology and what to expect what the GSTN will do next.
Okay, sir. Moving forward to our third question. During the last 5 years of GST, the government has been proactive in addressing the concerns of stakeholders and issuing a flurry of circulars, clarification, and orders. What are the some areas where the government has done really well in the past?
So numbers tell a story. 300 plus circulars have been issued in the last 5 years. And if you see, the first year was slightly higher than the average of 60 and it tapered down. One way somebody can comment is, oh, there are far too many circulars and clarifications. But I wouldn't look at it cynically. I look at it pretty welcome that the GST law and the GST administration is taking feedback, engaging with industry, and issuing clarifications. Um, Also, there have been, can we request the participants to go on mute? There's a bit of a. Right. So there's also been a fair bit of advanced rulings that have come out, and that's not necessarily worked out the best in my candid assessment. I do think the government has already now taken a decision to set up a national appellate advanced ruling authority. While we are yet to see that, some of the clarifications have addressed some of the concerns, but I do think more can be done there. So in short, some of the highlights of the proactive engagement in my mind would be a recent circular on the intermediary front, which clarifies that export of services is not to be taxed for ITS. That was a very landmark clarification, which I think is very welcome. There are other clarifications as well, which have already been issued and work in progress. And I think whether it goes back to initially what was on the composite supply front, what was a principal to agent scope. Over the journey of 5 years, we've seen pretty strong and detailed clarifications on tricky positions. And I think only more in store. I do want to add here that 59% of the people who did our survey have actually said that the government has been very proactive and also been open to engaging. And let's not forget, government is not only the central government. Central government is important and has been very welcoming to industry. Even the state governments have been very open, and they recognize it's a bit of a learning journey from both sides. I only expect that experience of consultation and collaboration to only increase in the year ahead and the years to come, because now we'll be in the audit and assessment stage of the life cycle of the GST law.
So the last question for now is, the GST system still demands a simpler structure and low compliance burden. So what should be the focus area for the government in the coming year to make the GST more successful?
Well, I think clearly ease of doing business is the common expectation, and rightly so. As I said a few minutes ago, that this is a year of tax audits and assessment. And therefore, I think what companies are hoping is that there is appropriate guidance on the way the audits and investigations will take place to avoid duplicity of proceedings, because there is a cross-empowerment power of the states and the center and vice versa. Second, I think that there's a hope that the tax litigation, the tax tribunal, is appropriately set up soon, so that if companies need to go to appeal, they have a tribunal forum which is not yet established. I must add that this would have been the same expectation I would have had 3 days ago if you had asked me, but I'm happy to note that the council has already set up a GOM of ministers to be looking into the final recommendations on setting up of the tribunal. Also, in the Honorable Finance Minister in the press conference did mention that this is going to be done in a month's time, and this will be deliberated and finalized hopefully in the next meeting early August from the GST Council. So these are two things more from an implementation perspective. But I think fundamentally, government should hopefully be open to either doing related changes of removing some of the provisions that are revenue neutral, cross-charge versus self-supply IST. If they are revenue neutral, can there be a little bit more simpler rule? We may even benefit of doing a removal of the GST restrictions, which is on the input credit front under Section 17(5). They were all there and grandfathered from the earlier GST law. And I think that pre-GST law, I think time is ripe for those restrictions to go away. And last but not the least, the other expectation is, since credit gets trapped for a lot of companies from a working capital standpoint, is there a way to unlock credit a little creatively? So there are refund methods, and the refunds under GST, there's data to show that it has happened faster than pre-GST, but that's for the service exporters and inverted duty. Inverted duty has been expanded yesterday to cover the input services as well, but still there's a large chunk of taxpayers who are into longer gestation period organizations where they will take some more time to make profit, or could be infrastructure, telecom, e-commerce, logistics. They are hoping that there are some more steps taken to unlock the working capital, and that's something that I would imagine is another expectation from the government standpoint.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to welcome Gulzar, sir, for his insights. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Yamini. So let me know if my screen is visible. Just give me a second. Is it visible?
Yes, you can go on the full screen mode, please.
Yes. So I think, Mahesh has talked about at a high level the different impact that GST had on various industries, government in the last 5 years, and what was expected from the government, whether government has addressed some of the asks, and what they have done in the recently concluded 47th GST Council meeting. I will get into some more little bit of a detail talking about what are the specific areas which have impacted the entire industry in last 5 years, what has gone well, what has not gone well, what was the ask of the industry and how the government has addressed it, and what is the way forward. So with this, I think the first and foremost area is to highlight what were the top 5 impact that GST had on the entire industry. And one of this impact was that digitization and automation of tax, right? That was, as already Mahesh mentioned, that from different state portals to one single GSTN portal, and then from e-waybill to e-invoice. Automation has been the main driver for the government in the last 5 years, and it continues to be so. Second is cascading, removal of cascading effect of taxes, which has actually resulted in reduction in price of goods and services. We have seen there were a lot of apprehensions at the time of implementation of GST as to whether or not there will be an inflation, which was seen in some of the Southeast Asian countries, that GST resulted into inflation. But the survey has clearly shown that GST has resulted into cascading effect of taxes, and of course, there was a positive impact in the price of goods and services under the GST regime. And third, very, very important aspect is that, when the GST Council was being formalized, there were a lot of apprehensions. How will the states and center come to consensus? How will the key decisions will be taken? Whether there will be any, a different stand taken by the state governments, etc. But remarkably, we have seen we already have 46th and 47th meeting of GST councils, and all the decisions have been taken with consensus, state and center working in tandem with each other. Next area is the removal of state barriers, right? We used to have state checkposts, check nakas. There was a lot of time taken at those check nakas. Used to have entry tax, municipal levies, etc., so on and so forth. Now with this one nation, one tax, one e-way bill system cutting across the country, the movement of goods and goods has actually, the transportation time has reduced significantly, is also one of the feedback that we have received from the industry. And last but not the least, the pricing of goods and services, because of cross utilization of input tax credit between goods and services, has resulted into a reduction in price of goods and services. These were the top 5 areas which the industries thought that GST had an impact on them, and as well as the consumer. Now coming to government, what are the key areas, key top 5 points which government has done well? And again, it is coming from the industry, that what all things government has done well, what is it that they need to do more. So as I said, automation of tax compliances, including written filings. So when initially there were a lot of hue and cry in terms of GST and not working, GSTR1, GSTR2, 2A, 3B, all those initial hiccups were there, but government has taken immediate steps to correct those anomalies, and they have implemented a very seamless GST and automated system. GST has started working well. e-way bill system also is processing millions of invoices every day, and now even the GSTR 1 and 2A and 2B filings are also going pretty seamless. Timely issuance of GST circulars. Again, Mahesh talked about this. 300 plus circulars have been issued. The idea was to issue this circular to make sure that the divergent views which are being taken by the field officers, there is a consistency in the tax positions that are taken. And engagement, enhanced engagement, whether you go to a state government, whether you go to a central government, they are actually willing to listen to the industry demand. You are going through certain forums, whether you are going individually, they are ready to listen to you, and of course take into consideration the requests that are coming from the industry. And wherever immediate actions were needed, government has taken those immediate actions as well. A lot of steps have also been taken to expedite the refund claim for the exporters. Now the refund of GST on export of goods, right? It was never before available in the pre-GST regime. Now you file your shipping bill, immediately you are entitled to get the GST refund. So that is also a very important aspect, and has helped the exporters in a big way in removing any working capital blockages. So those were the 5 key areas where government has really done well, and this is the feedback that is received from the industry. Now, what is it that the technology related digitization drive government has done? How the different industry segments have behaved? Now, if you see on this screen, very large or large industries, they have actually said yes, the digitalization and the technology related changes that government has done have actually successfully been implemented. But we see that on the MSME side, yes, some of the the percentage of positive is slightly lower. So I think government has been cognizant of this fact and taking a lot of actions in making sure that even the MSME and SME companies are also able to file their GST return and do the compliance in a seamless manner. What is coming in the future, right? So the GST Council's meeting press release mentioned yesterday very important aspect, that nowadays we are seeing that even the PIFA, the fraud analytics, whatever is being done at the GSTN or the various state analytics teams using technology, those results or actions are taken after a period of 2 to 3 years, right? And therefore by the time the actions are taken, in some cases the non-compliant service provider or suppliers are not available. In some cases the recipients are not available, and therefore to curb that, the artificial intelligence that is under consideration is to ensure that these kind of non-compliant taxpayers are identified at an advanced stage. so that you are filing your return based on the behavior of your return filing. Government can take proactive measures and immediate actions, so that they don't have to wait for 1 or 2 years or 3 years to get complete before they reach out to the taxpayer. So that is the future of the digitization drive government is going to do. And we also are eager to see what kind of tools and what kind of analytics government is going to use to do an early detection of these non-compliant taxpayers. So we will now talk about what are the key concerns which the industry have felt that in complying with GST laws, apart from, let's say, seamless one single technology platform, issuance of circulars. Of course, it's not a it has not been a piece of cake, but there were certain issues that industry has faced. So the main issue that we have observed is that overall input tax credit management vis-a-vis GST rules. So the matching concept has evolved over a period of time. In initial 2 to 3 years, there was a GSTR 2A reconciliation, and then government has introduced even some sort of percentage mismatch and matching criteria, subject to which you can take input tax credit. Now you can take input tax credit only based on your complete matching with GSTR 2B. So that was the main challenge that industry has faced in coping up with these requirements, which has also resulted into issuance of notices by the government authorities, and also blockage of working capital. Next area that was felt, which was very difficult for the industry to sort of implement, is a lot of changes that are taking place every now and then. Now you see changes in rates have happened multiple times. The clarification circulars, although they have been issued with an intention to reduce litigations or avoid any kind of dispute in a longer term, but the changes that have been made by the government has were very frequent, and the industry thought that to cope up with those changes, making changes in the ERP systems, talking to suppliers, customers, the contracting structures, etc. That was another area where industry thought it was difficult to comply with the GST law. Next was managing tax disputes. Tax disputes now, we have seen that multiple states advanced rulings are coming up. One particular issue, different states are issuing different type of rulings, and then of course taxpayers, either taxpayer or the government, is going to the appellate route, and still we have divergent rulings and divergent cases. So management of tax dispute is also something that industry felt that is an area where government needs to work, and where they found it difficult to comply with the GST law. Mahesh already mentioned absence of appellate forum. So now you won't believe that after the commissioner appeals, adjudication, and the order is passed, tribunal is not available. So either industry is waiting for tribunal to be formed, or they are straight away going to the high courts by way of writ petition. High courts in some cases accepting those writ petition, in some cases they are not accepting those writ petitions, stating that you should go before the tribunal. So that's also it is leading to again creating a lot of backlog of various disputes and litigations. And once those appellate tribunals are formed, I'm pretty sure that to clear the backlog of 5 years, it will take another 2 to 3 years to clear the backlog, and then that will keep on adding up. So absence of appellate forums was also considered to be as one of the major concern for the industry to comply with the GST law. Now, one was on compliance, and another was how procedurally companies have coped up with the GST law in the last 5 years. What were the issues they have faced? So one of the very important a point that I want to highlight, that although government has talked about that, okay, you will be administered by one authority, you either it is CGST or SGST, but still in many cases taxpayers are receiving repeated notices, repeated demands from various tax authorities. That was one area that was considered to be one of the biggest hurdle in sort of managing the entire compliance structure. Second, again, the time, and so for service sector, to be very precise, the number of returns that they were filing in the pre-GST regime versus GST regime has gone up. So there also the time that they are spending in complying with the GST was slightly increased. Efforts around availing credits with vendors and record keeping. So now that we all see that if a supplier is not paid the GST, then government is and the tax authorities are recovering that tax from the recipient, and therefore there is an additional burden casted upon the recipient to make sure that their vendors are also compliant. Initially, there was no mechanism available with the industry. Slowly and steadily, even government is taking a lot of steps to make sure that the industry is also having enough and more information available with them to make sure that their vendor is compliant. However, having said that, even after making payment to the vendors, and vendor would have not deposited the GST liability, the recipients are thinking that there's a double hit that we are facing. So that's another concern that was highlighted. I talked about the dual investigation, DGGI, anti-evasion, SGST authorities, CGST authorities. So the idea is that there has to be one investigation. That's also one of the requests that is coming from the industry. Okay, you please come and do audit us, but please have one agency coming to our doorsteps and do the complete audit. Tax position in implementing specific provisions in GST law. So divergent tax positions and how do we implement them? Different industries are taking different views based on the advanced rulings, based on the clarifications that are issued. So that's also one area which needed a lot of time for the industry to comply. So after all of this, what are the key focus areas that the government should, and this is basically the demand from the industry, that what are the key top 5-6 areas where the government should focus after completion of 5 years? A lot of steps have been taken. We have seen a lot of positive steps, positive impact of the GST law in the entire ecosystem, in the entire supply chain management. But what are the key things that the government should do next in the next 1 or 2 years or so? So one was increased focus on ease of doing business, right? So and that is basically because of the fact that how do we, of course there's a lot of ease of doing business has already happened in the GST law from 29 states VAT laws, then 2 central laws and multiple other octroys and municipal levies, etc., to one GST law. That's already a great step towards ease of doing business. But having a uniformity and application of law across the country is again one of the steps which will help in doing ease of doing business. Resolution of dual investigation I already talked about. ITC legislative reforms, right? This is also a very, very important aspect where there are a lot of credit restrictions imposed under section 17(5) of the GST law, where you cannot take input tax credit on certain areas and certain items. But there are a lot of interpretational issues that are still cropping up which need to be addressed. So that's one basic requirement, basic ask of the industry, that government should make sure that the negative list of input tax credit is reduced significantly. Freeing up working capital, right? By and that's a very, very interesting ask of the industry, right? So because under the GST law, the refund can be claimed only in 2 cases. Either you have an inverted duty structure, or let's say you have a refund case where you are exporting goods. Apart from that, if you have an accumulated input tax credit, right? Maybe because of low value addition, maybe because of higher purchases, higher sales. So instead of giving refund in certain cases, industry is requesting that can we sort of trade into those input tax credit as a tradable scrips, which is currently done like SEIS, MEIS, road tax scripts, which are currently tradable. Industry wanted that you please make input tax credit also a tradable script, so that it frees up a lot of working capital. If let's say I have a huge input tax credit and I see I will be able to utilize it only in next 1 year or so, I can monetize it by transferring to some other taxpayer who has the cash liability. So that's a very, very interesting request that came from the industry. Now expanding the GST net, right? So when the GST was implemented, there was a roadmap that sooner or later electricity and petroleum products will be included under the GST law, so that there is a seamless input tax credit flow. However, till now that has not happened, and in fact, in the last meeting also, it was one of the agenda items, but it could not be taken up in detail. So this is also a long pending demand for the entire renewable energy industry plus oil and gas industry, and also non-renewable energy industry, that please include electricity and petroleum products under the GST, so that the input tax credit that is stuck, which is non-recoverable, can be utilized and the cost is optimized. Dispute resolution and litigation management. So GST tribunal is already now, I talked about, I'll not spend again on time on that. And litigation management. Another, this is also a very interesting request that came from the industry, that why can't we have a pan-India dispute resolution mechanism, right? So like we have an income tax, we should have a similar dispute resolution mechanism for a GST as well, which has a pan-India presence. So if I am having certain disputes, I'm facing certain disputes, I want to go through a DRP dispute resolution panel to avoid any long prolonged litigation, as well as any blockage of tax deposit, working capital, input tax rate, etc. I should be allowed to go through this dispute resolution mechanism. So these were the 5-6 asks that the industry had, that the government should focus upon. Now we will see in the next slide how many of these asks government has addressed and what steps they have taken. So so key actions taken in the GST Council meeting. So we are only going to talk about the top 5 steps that the government has taken in reducing the in meeting the ask of the industry. One and very important aspect was rate rationalization to remove the inverted duty structure. Now, a lot of products where the input was procured at a higher rate and the output was supplied at a lower rate, which it was leading into an inverted duty structure. And on top of that, while doing the refund calculation, the input tax credit of services was not even allowed to be included. So I think a very, very welcome change by the government, where they have actually done away with the inverted duty structure in various cases. A lot of consumer products, including ink, LED lights, bulb fixtures, inverted duty structure has been done away with, and the formula for calculation of refund as well, in case still there are some products where inverted duty structure exists, that has also will be changed now to provide the refund of services as well. So that's a very, very welcome change. The entire works contract industry, working on government projects, was facing this issue, where the output was taxed at 12%, the inputs were procured at 18%, 28%, different rates. And again, while filing for refund of inverted duty structure, the input service credit was being disallowed, or it was getting excluded. So this is going to be a very, very welcome change for the entire industry, wherever inverted duty refunds are being filed. Then some exemptions have been withdrawn, such as hotel accommodation services by GST and RBI. Now GST will be levied whenever any services are provided by them. Clarifications issued on applicable GST rates. I think the first is very, very interesting, where there was no clarity that if I am supplying an electric vehicle, right? Nowadays, we have seen in the new era of EVs that the battery swapping system, EV, is typically supplied without a battery system also, and then you can swap the battery, you can buy the battery from anywhere you want. And in fact, and therefore the question was that without a battery, can you say that it's an EV, and therefore eligible for the lower 5% GST rate. So the clarification is being issued that even if you are selling EV without or with battery pack, then that will still be eligible for 5% GST. That was one very, very important welcome clarification. Now, other measures that are being taken for trade facilitation was, no input tax credit reversal in case of duty credit scrip by exporters. Lot of demands I have seen raised, and concerns being raised during the audits and investigations, that any exporter who is selling duty credit scripts which are not subject to GST, they are being asked to reverse input tax credit. So the clarification is issued, and law will be amended with an explanation that no input tax credit reversal would be required in case the exempted income is from duty credit scripts, similar to the interest income. So in interest also we have a similar clarification where input credit reversal is not required. Next section is very, very important and again much awaited, where government is going to issue certain circulars on various contentions aspects. One is eligibility of refunds by the recipient of supplies who is where the supply is treated as a deemed export. Lots of issues, queries were being asked, lots of litigation was happening on this aspect. So government is coming up with the circular. Need to see that what are the fine prints of the circular, how it is going to benefit the industry. Second is interpretation of section 17(5). Now, if you see the asks of the industry from government was also that, okay, remove credit restrictions, do away with the ambiguity that I have on input tax rate eligibility. So the clarification that is going to be issued on 17(5). It will be very interesting to see that how government is going to interpret the various buckets of section 17(5) and how they are going to remove the ambiguity around eligibility of input tax rate on various aspects. Next is perquisites provided to employees. I'm sure this area does not require any elaboration, but employer-employee transactions have been a subject matter of great debate since the inception of GST. Despite of issuance of press release by the government immediately after introduction of GST on employer-employee transactions, we have seen numerous advance rulings and various litigations only on this subject, that whether or not the transaction between employer and employee is taxable, and if it is yes, in what situation, and if it is not, what are those situations. So I'm hoping that this circular is going to bring a lot of clarity on this entire subject. And if something is part of the employment contract, any benefit, whether it is concessional or it is full provided by the employer, should not be subject to GST. And but we'll have to see how do we how the government is going to clarify these aspects. A utilization of amount of input tax credit available in the credit ledger and the amount available in cash ledger. Again, some clarifications will be issued on this aspect. However, one very long-standing demand of the industry that, okay, CGST of one state should be allowed to be utilized against CGST of another state was still not addressed in this meeting, but we are hoping that that is also one of the key ask or key step that can help industry manage the working capital effectively. Now, there was still some of the pending areas where government said that, okay, we are not going to decide in this 47th meeting. One was, tax on casinos, race course, and online gambling. A group of ministers have been directed to re-examine this case because there were questions asked that how can you equate gambling with online gaming? Online gaming can also be two different types. You are, let's say, having some sort of gambling related games, you are having some creative games. So you cannot equate, the gambling race course with online gaming. There has to be some distinction between the two. And therefore, one needs to clearly make a distinction. So this issue has been referred to the group of ministers to be addressed. Bringing petroleum products, I already talked about, and power under GST. This issue was not taken up. And formation of appellate tribunal. So this is also something that three key areas which, of course, were discussed but not taken up in the meeting, and no decision was taken. So in overall, what we see that 5 years journey has been a roller coaster ride. A lot of changes have been made by the government. Industry has also reacted. Government has also reacted to those changes. But overall, it has been a great journey. It was the biggest reform since independence, and therefore the teething troubles were bound to happen. But now, after 5 years, a lot of things have been stabilized. Still, we are expecting that in next 1 or 2 years there will be a lot of changes on the input tax credit side, ease of doing business side, and dispute resolution side by the government. So with this, I think I'll hand it over, Yamini, to you back again, and if there are any questions from the audience would be happy to take.
Thank you so much, sir. That was an insightful and informative session. So I now request participants to post their queries in the chat box that will be addressed by the speakers.
So, I mean, if there are no further questions, yeah, there is a question.
There is one query from UMMS Delhi. The query is how to claim under section 42 and 43 in GST.
So I think maybe if one can explain this question better, I can answer. But 42 and 43 are basically talking about how to do input tax credit reversal in taxable as well as exempt supply. Very, very detailed topic, but if there's a specific question that is there, I would be happy to answer that. So, I mean, if there are no further questions, maybe, you receive any questions further, we can answer them separately as well. That's not an issue, even at a later date. So we can, wrap up the session now.